Dad's new wife made me sleep in a drafty cabin for 2 years while her kids got the bedrooms in my dad's antique shop. So when I only invited my dad to my graduation and not her, she had a complete meltdown. I remember the day like it was yesterday. My name is Marcus. I'm 18 years old, and I live in a caretaker's cabin behind my father's antique shop in a small town called Maple Ridge, Pennsylvania. It's been 3 years since I started living here, but it feels like a lifetime. It all started when Dad married Clarissa. She was 42, warm and polite on the surface, but there was always something sharp in her smile. She moved in with her 2 kids, Ronan, who's a year older than me, and Eliza, who was 16. When they came, it was like the whole house shifted around them. Dad told me, "Marcus, I want you to be flexible. This is a chance for you to grow. A character-building experience, you know?" I nodded, even though my gut told me it wasn't fair. I had always lived in the upstairs bedroom, but suddenly Clarissa decided Ronan and Eliza should have those rooms. "It just makes sense," she said one night at dinner. "The kids need their space, and it's only logical that Marcus could handle a more rustic setting." Rustic was her polite word for the caretaker's cabin out back. It smelled like old wood and mildew, and the door didn't shut right unless you slammed it. My dad said it was a real test of resilience. Clarissa smiled and said, "It's temporary, of course. You'll get used to it." The first night I moved out there, I remember standing in the doorway of the cabin, holding a box of my stuff, feeling like I was being erased from my own life. The main house was warm and lit up, laughter spilling out of the kitchen. The cabin was cold, and every board creaked under my feet. I tried to make it feel like home. I hung up some old posters, stacked my books by the bed, but no matter what I did, it never felt like mine. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Dad said it was just for a few months, that once everyone settled in, I'd move back in the house. But months turned into years, and the promise faded like the peeling paint on the cabin walls. Winter was the worst. The heater barely worked, rattling and groaning like it was alive. I'd layer up in sweatshirts and blankets, my breath fogging in the cold air. Sometimes I'd look out the window and see the glow from the house, the silhouettes of my dad and Clarissa moving around in the kitchen. I wondered if they ever thought about me, or if I was already a ghost to them. I tried to talk to Dad about it. I told him the heater was broken, that the roof leaked when it rained. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, these are the things that build character. You'll thank me one day." I didn't feel thankful. I felt like I was losing pieces of myself, one frozen night at a time. I'd lie in bed at night, listening to the wind scrape against the cabin walls, and wonder how long it would be before they forgot I was out there at all. That was the beginning of the end, even if I didn't know it yet. I was the outsider now, a caretaker in name only, and it felt like the whole world was conspiring to make sure I never found my way back in. It was the middle of January, the coldest it had been all winter. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they might crack. The old heater in the caretaker's cabin had finally given up. I'd known it was coming. The clanking and coughing had gotten worse every night, but when it finally died, it was like the last bit of warmth in my life had been snatched away. I threw on every layer I had, 2 sweatshirts, a coat, even a scarf I found in an old box. I wrapped myself in blankets until I looked like some kind of winter ghost, but it didn't matter. The cold seeped through it all. My fingers turned red, and I couldn't feel my toes. I tried to sleep, but the shivering wouldn't stop. It felt like the air itself was trying to squeeze me out. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up. I slipped out of the cabin and made my way to the antique shop. It was dark and still, the only light a flicker from a street lamp outside. Inside the shop, the air was slightly warmer. I stepped around piles of dusty furniture and old clocks, heading for the back room. There was an old quilt folded up in the corner, musty but thick. I curled up on the floor, wrapping it tight around me. I lay there, surrounded by antiques and shadows, my breath echoing in the quiet. For a moment, I let myself pretend I was part of the shop's history, a relic tucked away, waiting for someone to notice me. But I knew better. In this family, I wasn't even worth as much as one of these broken clocks. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, the door to the back room banged open. Clarissa stood there, her face pinched with fury. "Marcus, what in God's name are you doing in here?" I sat up, my heart hammering. "The heater's broken," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's freezing in the cabin. I just needed somewhere." She cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't start with your drama. You're trying to ruin the peace in this family, aren't you? You think sleeping here is going to make Gregory feel sorry for you." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words got stuck in my throat. Clarissa's eyes were cold and hard, like ice. "Get back to your cabin," she ordered. "I won't have you turning this place into a pity party." "I'm not." I tried again, but she was already turning away, her shoulders rigid. A second later, Gregory appeared behind her. He didn't look at me. "Marcus," he said, his voice low and tired. "Stop being dramatic. Go back to the cabin." "Dad, the heaters," I started. He didn't even let me finish. "Enough. This isn't the time. Just go." I stood there for a second, feeling the last bit of fight drain out of me. Then I gathered the quilt and trudged back to the caretaker's cabin. The walk felt longer than usual, my feet numb on the frozen ground. For the next 2 nights, I tried to make do. I piled on blankets, huddled under the covers, but the cold never left. My fingers were stiff and clumsy in the morning, my nose always red from the chill. Finally, on the third day, Gregory came by with a small space heater he bought on clearance. He dropped it at my feet without a word, like it was an afterthought. "Thanks," I said, but he didn't respond. He just turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the cold doorway with that heater in my hands. That was the night I realized it wasn't just the cabin that was broken, it was us. My father's silence, Clarissa's fury, the way they both looked at me like I was a burden instead of a son. The caretaker's cabin wasn't just a place, it was a sentence, and I was serving every day of it alone. Graduation was coming up in June. It should have been a time to celebrate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the day would be just like every other, me on the outside looking in. A couple weeks before the ceremony, the school mailed out the tickets, 2 per graduate. I remember holding them in my hands, the paper thin and a little crinkled at the edges. 2 tickets. One for my mom, I thought immediately. She lived in Ohio now, but she always made the effort to stay in touch. She'd send me texts out of the blue, "How's your day going?" Like she knew I was disappearing in this family. I called her that night. "Mom, I got 2 tickets for graduation. I want you to have one," I said. She sounded so happy. I wouldn't miss it for the world. "Honey?" The second ticket was for Dad. Even after everything, I still wanted him there. Maybe part of me was still that little kid, hoping he'd be proud of me. I waited until dinner to ask. Clarissa was stirring a pot of soup, and Ronan and Eliza were arguing about something on TV. I cleared my throat and held up the ticket. "Dad," I said, trying to sound casual, "I have an extra ticket. I want you to come." He looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes that I couldn't quite read. "Of course, Marcus," he said. But then Clarissa cut in. "Oh, Marcus, that's sweet. But of course, I'll need to be there, too." My chest tightened. "I only have 2 tickets," I said carefully. She gave me a tight smile. "Well, your father and I should both be there. It's a family milestone, after all." I swallowed hard. "I want my mom to be there. She's coming from out of state." The second ticket was for Dad. Clarissa's smile faded. "Marcus, be reasonable. It wouldn't be fair to exclude me. I'm your stepmother." Dad shifted in his seat, his fork scraping against his plate. "Marcus, she's right. We're a family." I felt a knot in my throat. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm not inviting you, Clarissa." For a moment, the whole room went still. Ronan paused the TV, glancing over his shoulder. Eliza looked up from her phone. Clarissa's lips parted like she'd been slapped. "Excuse me." I said. "No," I repeated. "You've never treated me like part of this family. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine on a day that's supposed to be mine." Dad's face turned red. "Marcus, don't do this." I stood up, my hands shaking just a little. "I'm tired of pretending," I said. "This is my graduation. My mom will be there." "Dad, you can have the other ticket. But if you don't want it, fine. I'm not changing my mind." Clarissa let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "You're just trying to make everything about you, aren't you?" I looked at her, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. "For once," I said, "I think I deserve that." Then I left the table, my heart hammering in my chest. I could hear Dad calling after me, but I didn't turn back. I went out to the cabin and closed the door behind me, leaning against it until the echo of their voices finally died down. That night, I sat in the dark, the 2 graduation tickets on the little table by my bed. One for my mom, who had always been there even from miles away, and one for my dad, who still didn't seem to know how to be there at all. A couple days after that argument at dinner, Clarissa cornered me in the cramped kitchen of the antique shop. It was late afternoon, the shop closed for the day, and the dusty shelves seemed to watch as she slammed the back door behind her. "Marcus," she said, her voice low and trembling. "We need to talk. Now." I was wiping down the counter, trying to avoid her eyes. "I don't have anything to say to you," I muttered. "Oh, but I have plenty to say to you," she snapped, stepping closer. Her voice was tight, her eyes wet with angry tears. "You're being spiteful, Marcus. Do you understand that? You're trying to ruin this family. You're hurting your father." My hands stilled on the rag. I looked up at her, feeling something hot twist in my gut. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said. "I just don't want you at my graduation." "You're being petty," she hissed. "All I've ever tried to do is make this family work." I let out a sharp laugh, the sound harsh in the small room. "Is that what you think you've done? You took my room, my place in this family, and shoved me into that freezing cabin. You made sure I felt like a stranger in my own home." She recoiled like I'd slapped her. "You're twisting everything," she said, her voice breaking. "I've done nothing but try to help you. I've cooked for you. I've included you." I cut her off, my voice rising. "You've never included me. You've never even tried to understand how it felt to be out there, night after night, freezing my ass off while you sat in that warm house and pretended everything was perfect." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're cruel, Marcus. You're so ungrateful. Do you know what it's like, trying to blend 2 families together? You're making it impossible." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not making it impossible," I said, my voice low. "You did that all by yourself. You treated me like an inconvenience, like a problem to be dealt with. Well, guess what? I'm done pretending I'm okay with it." The door creaked open behind us, and Dad stepped in. He looked between us, his face hard. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Clarissa wiped her tears quickly. "Gregory, he's being hateful," she said, her voice catching. "He's trying to break this family apart." Dad turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "Marcus, apologize to your stepmother right now." I stared at him, feeling the last bit of hope I'd been holding on to flicker and die. "No, I said simply. Marcus, he started, but I shook my head. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth, I said. You've both treated me like I don't matter for years. I'm done saying sorry just to keep the peace. Clarissa let out a choked sob, turning away from me. Dad stepped forward, his jaw tight. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice cold. Maybe, I said, my voice steady. But at least I'm not making the mistake of pretending this is a real family. Then I brushed past them both and walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding. I didn't stop until I reached the cabin, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was a couple days after that blow-up in the antique shop kitchen. I was restocking the back hallway shelves that had been cluttered with dusty glass bottles and half-broken clocks for as long as I could remember, when I heard my father's voice behind me. Marcus, he said sharply, we need to talk. I turned, startled. He was standing there in his work jacket, eyes dark and angry. The same look he used to give customers who tried to haggle too hard. Only this time, it was aimed at me. Okay, I said slowly. About what? You know damn well what about, he snapped, stepping closer. This graduation nonsense. You're going to fix it. I swallowed hard. I'm not changing my mind, Dad. The tickets are set. Clarissa isn't coming. His face turned red. You're tearing this family apart over something so small, Marcus. You're humiliating me. Do you understand that? I felt a flicker of something in my chest, fear, maybe, but also anger. I'm not humiliating you, I said. I'm just not going to pretend anymore. Clarissa doesn't deserve to be there. You know what she's done. You let it happen. Don't you dare blame me, he said, his voice rising. I did what I thought was best for everyone. You think it's been easy, trying to keep this family together. You didn't keep it together, I shot back. You kept quiet. You let her treat me like I didn't matter. You let her move me out to that freezing cabin and didn't say a word. That cabin was good for you, he snapped. It built character. It toughened you up. I stared at him, my chest tight. It didn't toughen me up, Dad. It made me feel like I didn't belong in my own family. It made me feel like a ghost. He slammed his hand against the old cabinet door, the wood rattling under his fist. You will not talk to me like this, he said, his voice shaking with anger. I'm your father. I took a step back, my hands trembling. And I'm your son, I said quietly. But that doesn't mean I have to let you keep ignoring what's been happening. I'm done pretending I'm okay with it. He stared at me, his face flushed and his breathing ragged. For a moment, I thought he was going to shout again. But instead, he took a deep breath, his shoulders stiff. If you don't change your mind, he said coldly, then I won't come to your graduation. You'll walk across that stage and you won't see me there. The words hit me like a punch in the chest. Part of me wanted to give in, to tell him I'd fix it. But I just stood there, swallowing hard. That's your choice, I said softly. I won't change mine. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he turned and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him. The hallway felt even smaller after he left, the silence pressing down on me like the weight of the whole house. I stood there for a while, my hands still shaking, the echo of his threat ringing in my ears. But even though it hurt, there was something else there too, a flicker of something like relief, because for once, I wasn't the one bending. I was the one drawing the line. Graduation day dawned bright and warm, but I felt a cold knot in my stomach as I got ready. My mom had flown in the night before. She stayed in a motel on the edge of town. She said she didn't want to stay at Dad's, not after everything. She came to the caretaker's cabin early that morning, knocking gently and bringing breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast from the diner down the road. You ready for today? She asked, her eyes warm but worried. I think so, I said. My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You've worked so hard for this, Marcus. You deserve to be proud. I nodded, trying to let her words sink in. We sat for a while, eating quietly. Every bite felt heavy in my throat. I kept glancing at my phone, half hoping for a message from Dad saying he'd changed his mind. But there was nothing. By the time we got to the ceremony, my stomach was a mess of nerves and quiet dread. The auditorium was buzzing with laughter and chatter, families crowding into rows of folding chairs. My mom beamed at me as we found our seats. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I swallowed back the lump in my throat, nodding. I saw Dad arrive a few minutes before it started. He walked in alone, his suit pressed and neat, his shoulders stiff. He didn't even look my way. He sat down in the row ahead of us, next to my mom. I could feel the distance between us like a wall. The ceremony started and the principal droned on about milestones and futures. I barely heard a word. I kept glancing at Dad, wondering if he'd even look at me when I walked across the stage. When they called my name, I stood up, my knees shaking. I could feel my mom's smile behind me, and for a moment, it was enough. I walked across the stage, my gown swishing around my ankles, and took my diploma from the principal. I tried not to look out at the crowd. I didn't want to see if Dad was clapping or if he was just sitting there, arms crossed and face blank. When I stepped down off the stage, my mom was waiting in the aisle, tears in her eyes. She hugged me tight. You did it, she whispered. I'm so proud. Dad was there too, standing just behind her. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, his mouth a thin line. Finally, he muttered, congratulations, but there was no warmth in it, no pride. Thanks, I said quietly. He shifted awkwardly. I'll see you at the house, he said, and then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, holding my diploma, feeling the weight of everything that had come before. My mom touched my arm gently. You want to get out of here? She asked. I nodded, and we left. We drove out of town, windows down, the warm wind in my face. My mom talked about her flight back, her job, little things that felt like safety. I didn't say much. I just listened, feeling the ache in my chest slowly settle. Later that night, back in the cabin, I lay awake for a long time. My diploma sat on the little table by my bed, a reminder that I'd done something real, something that was mine, even if my dad couldn't see it. For the first time, I didn't care if he did, because in that quiet cabin, under the flickering light, I finally felt like I was enough. The week after graduation, I started packing up the caretaker's cabin. I'd always kept my life small in there, just a few boxes of clothes, a stack of old paperbacks, the quilt I'd stolen from the antique shop when the heater broke down. Each box I sealed up felt like a step closer to finally leaving everything behind. My mom offered to help, but I told her I needed to do it alone. She understood. She always did. So I spent those long summer afternoons alone, sorting through years of quiet hurt. Every time I taped up a box, it felt like I was packing away a piece of who I used to be. Clarissa avoided me entirely in those last days. She barely even looked at me when she passed through the shop. Once, I heard her talking to Dad in the kitchen, her voice tight and panicked. "He's just running away," she said. "He'll come crawling back when he realizes he can't make it on his own." Dad didn't say anything, but his silence was enough. That was how it always was. He wouldn't defend me, but he wouldn't stop her either. On moving day, I carried the last of my boxes out to the old pickup I'd borrowed from a friend. Dad was standing on the back porch, arms crossed, watching me like he was waiting for me to crack. I lifted the last box into the truck bed, shut the tailgate, and turned to face him. He didn't say much. He just gave me a stiff nod, his lips pressed in that same thin line. "Good luck," he said. The words were as flat as the rest of his face. I swallowed, feeling that familiar ache in my chest, but I didn't let it show. "Thanks," I said quietly. For a second, I thought he might say something else, maybe even try to explain why he'd let things get so bad. But he didn't. He just turned away, back to the house, leaving me standing there with the summer heat beating down on my shoulders. I climbed into the truck and started the engine. The caretaker's cabin was small in the rearview mirror, half hidden by the overgrown grass and the rusted-out garden tools. I didn't feel a sense of victory or even relief, just a quiet sadness, like I was leaving a part of me behind. As I drove away, I didn't look back. I kept my eyes on the road, the horizon stretching out in front of me. The caretaker's cabin, the antique shop, even the house, they were all just pieces of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I pulled off the road a few miles outside of town, parking by a field of wildflowers that danced in the breeze. I sat there for a while, the truck idling, and let myself breathe. For the first time in years, there was no cold draft seeping through the cracks, no Clarissa's tight smiles, no Dad's silent disapproval. Just me, just the open sky. And for the first time, that was enough.